Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the Blue and Gold podcast, where we like to highlight Naval Academy grads doing great things out in the world. Today we have the honor of interviewing Dan Lesniak, who is a real estate developer in the DC area, developed over 300 units. He's also a best-selling author, and he owns one of the top real estate teams in the DMV area. Dan, welcome to the show, and tell the goats a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jeff. I'm excited to be on here and get in front of your listeners and viewers, and hopefully, some of them can learn from the path I've been down. I've been doing real estate for 12 years now, a little over 12 years. As a professional, I got my license in 2011. And this was not something I thought I was going to do, after graduating from the Naval Academy or going into subs or business school. Real estate agent's not what most people think of, right? When you think Naval Academy, and I think there's a lot of us that ended up in real estate.
Yeah,
that way, right? Where it was not our dream as a child, right?
Yeah.
So we're here, obviously doing real estate. My first year, I went out and sold 22 million, and that was a great year. And I started to build a team, met my wife, Carrie Scholl, who was also in real estate at the time. And eventually we merged our teams and built up to a team that was selling a little over 700 million a year.
Okay.
A couple of years ago was our best year. And, we're hoping to break that soon. And yeah, we got into development as well. Like you said, I've done, probably close to 15, 16 projects now, half of which we've exited, half of which are ongoing. And so it's been, a fun ride for sure. Did the coaching company as well, Hyperfast Agent. We have a podcast there and, connect with a lot of real estate agents across the world, really, through the podcast and the book. So, I'm excited to be here today and hopefully share some of what I've learned while building these different businesses.
Awesome. So we got a lot to uncover here today. Can you talk about the development business? Because essentially DC is one of the hardest places in America to develop real estate, and Dan is doing it at a high level. So can you, touch a little bit, like, how'd you even get into the, real estate development game?
So we got into it in 2013 when I came across a really good subdividable lot in Arlington. It was an acre in Arlington, under a mile to the metro, really close to DC, to give people some perspective. And we, me and Carrie recognized kind of right away we'd be able to get at least 4, but maybe 5 lots out of it. And we got the deal under contract, took it to a builder, partnered with them, and we helped design, they built it, we sold it, and I think on that deal, it was 4 homes that we ended up getting out of it. We sold for like 1.6 to 1.7 range. But, the lot was like 2 million, and back then you could build the houses for like 600,000. So, kind of do the math on that. I think the partnership netted about $1 million on that. And then, that became something that we repeated like once or twice a year, where we would find a single family home, older home in Arlington, knock it down, build a new home. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, one of our builder partners wanted to do condo development in DC. So that was a big change, right? Crossing the river, going from Northern Virginia into DC. And it is challenging, like you said, right? There's a whole another set of permits and regulatory challenges that you have specific to DC that you don't have in a lot of other areas. So, now we've got, I think, close to 100 units that we're, at some stage developing, either about to start construction or about to finish, or we've got, I think, 7 units now that are finished, 4 of which are under contract. So.
Okay, that's awesome. So someone like me is interested in, developing real estate. I have like no idea where to start. So can you just talk about the process from a bird's eyes point of view?
Yeah, I would. I mean, if you're starting out, I would definitely go find a really good builder, someone with a good reputation, or another team that's kind of done it before, and start off just by partnering with them, right? Maybe you find the deal, or you bring some other skill set or value. Maybe you bring capital to the deal, right? So find someone that you can partner with. I think that's done it before in the area that you want to do it before. I think that's the biggest piece of advice I would give to someone, because like you don't know what you don't know when you're just starting out.
Yeah.
The best way to learn that kind of stuff is to partner with people that have done it before. But typically, you're gonna have to get a deal under contract, and there's a bunch of different levels in this, right? Like you can do a rehab where you're just improving the existing square footage, right? You're not adding additional square footage. I think that's kind of like your level 1. Level 2, you're adding square footage or maybe tearing down and building a new house. And then level 3, I would say, is when you're increasing density. So maybe you're subdividing and getting multiple single families, or you're taking like a 4 unit and getting 8 or 12 units out of it, right? Through going up, out, changing zoning or whatever. So, I think there's 3 kind of levels, and each of those gets more complex. Each of those has more planning. Each of those has more permitting, more zoning. So more things can go wrong the bigger it gets. So again, if you haven't done it before, bring someone else on the deal and take less and partner with someone that can help you.
Yeah, someone that can actually like teach you the fundamentals, and then maybe later on you can go off and do like your own deals and things like that, which I think is important. Just partner up with somebody. It just takes you honestly like further in life. See how you can add value to somebody. You have to be able to speak the language before you approach these people, because if you approach them and you don't even know how to speak the language, or you don't know anything about real estate, then they're probably not going to take you serious. So what I like to say is, essentially, learn first, learn as much as you can through podcasts, through books, and then, seek out a mentor that you can, essentially add value to, and then take it from there. I think too many people think, I'm just going to reach out to this person and I don't know anything about the topic, which is,
right.
It's a bad idea. I would imagine you wouldn't even entertain anybody if they came to you and didn't know how to speak, the language.
I would be a lot. Yeah, I question their seriousness. So,
yeah.
Okay. I agree with the concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk about just the challenges you faced as a developer? Like we said, DC, hardest place to develop. I don't know if you got like any like stories or anything like that. I would imagine a little bit of it has to be, political, because you're in DC and you're developing land and stuff like that. So can you talk about just the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, we've had two cases where we've had to change what the current zoning would allow through a process called BZA, which requires you to have a hearing and get approval. And for those, we hired attorneys that specialize in it and helped push it through. We have not done anything that would require like major zoning changes, though, right? Like in both of those cases, it was getting permission to make the units a little bit bigger, or going from 6 units to 9 units in one case. The biggest challenge really is just the bureaucracy is not quick, and it's never. I don't think it was ever quick since I've started, but during the COVID years, it got slower. So, there's multiple situations. You submit things, you get comments back 3 months later. You answer those as fast as you can, sit on them for months again, right? So just, the challenges of pushing things through bureaucracy. There's actually like jobs now, expediters that you hire to push things through. They're usually, if you get a good one, they're usually worth every penny of that investment. So, yeah, the challenge, the biggest challenge we've had in DC typically has been in the permitting phase with the bureaucracy.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Talk a little bit about like your different type of investments. Are you like hanging on to some of these units, or are you just selling them all off? What's your ultimate, strategy? Because I know for a fact, like developing is some risk associated with.
Oh yeah,
So,
definitely risk. Because you have an idea of how long it should take, but then that can change, and you don't know where the market's going to be. DC has a lot of protections that other places don't, just because of the federal government, the job market there, the stability, right? So I'm less worried about price fluctuations than other parts of the country. But yeah, buying something that is existing that only needs minor repairs, if any, to be a lot more predictable. Right? So there's things we cannot predict. Most of the development we've done, we've gone into it with the goal of selling it. There's been some projects we've done where we've kept. We've done some smaller level developments in Florida that we've kept as Airbnbs that have been pretty good on the cash flow side. But most of what we do in DC, we're going into it thinking we're selling it.
Okay, that makes sense. So you mentioned like developments in other states. You develop in DC, which is one of the hardest places to develop. Do you find it a lot more simple to develop in other areas and things like that? Like, is developing in Florida a layup compared to developing in DC?
No, it has its own set of challenges as well, and I don't know of anywhere really in the country now where there's not going to be some challenges, right? Labor's gotten harder, supply chains have gotten harder. So I think it's kind of a weird time when it comes to developing. It's just gotten harder to get things done, harder to find good people than it used to be. And so we've had our challenges no matter where we've gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about how it affected your development during the COVID time period? Like, how did you even survive that? I guess those challenges.
Yeah, things just unfortunately got slower. So again, like permits took longer, construction took longer, cost went up, and it required enlarging the team, so hiring more people. Carrie took a much more active role because she's had tons of experience building and scaling teams with the real estate team and coaching other people on how to do it. So that made a huge impact on her involvement on pushing things through quicker. And yeah, I think a lot of the challenges with COVID are still with us, it seems.
Yeah.
Even though no one's really talking about COVID anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got the Canadian wildfires now.
Yeah, the smoke in the air and stuff like that. Seems like it's always something. So talk a little bit about, you being a best-selling author. Did you did you imagine that path, while you were creating these businesses? Did you predict that you would even be interested in writing a book, and how did that process work?
Yeah, I didn't know it was really the book, the hyperlocal, hyperfast agent, that it would do well. I thought I had a very unique first year in the business, going out and selling a little over 22 million, and I wanted to tell the story of how I did it, the strategies I used, and it was, I think I wrote it about 4 years or so after that first year, and at the time we had a big team, and I just thought it would be kind of a cool story to tell, to help other people. And I had some strategic frameworks that I weaved in through there, and a lot of different tactics that I used, but I just thought it was a cool story, and I didn't know anyone would listen to it or buy it. We put it on Audible as well, and that's really what kind of led to us doing events and our coaching business, which is, the Hyperfast Agent program's been great for us. And eventually the podcast. So it led to a lot of other things just because it got such a good response. I think I thought about it pretty early in my career, but when I actually started to take it seriously, it probably took about 6 months to write.
Yeah.
And publish. And yeah, I'm just glad I did it, and never really had any big plans for it. And it's cool when I meet people now and they say they've read it or listened to it or get feedback, that's kind of what helped them get into real estate.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I read the book early in my career, and to me it's honestly it's a business book. Yeah, it's about being a real estate agent, but it's a little bit more than that. It's like a whole concept of you should go a mile deep, right, instead of casting a wide net. Can you talk a little bit about how that just pertains to business and people starting side hustles? We have a lot of entrepreneurs in this community that do the whole dual career. They're looking to start up a business. So that whole concept, can you break it down like business wise?
Sure. So I came up with this framework, STP, segmentation, targeting, position, right? So kind of divide your market up into different segments and pick which one you want to target. And you have to think of, okay, I need it to be big enough that there's enough business there if I were to gain a decent amount of market share, right? But not so big that my message gets diluted, which is where most, I think, real estate agents and probably entrepreneurs go wrong. Like they start off too big, so then it's hard to. It just takes more energy and more time and more resources than you have when you're just starting out to break through to a bigger audience. So I think most people, the challenge is getting it small enough. And then the last part, P, positioning. How are you going to position yourself to add unique value to that group of people? And really, when you think of if you're starting real estate or any business as a side hustle, it's easier to go narrower.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a lot of time or resources to pour into it, right? You have other things that you need to do. And that was kind of the case for me starting off. I had a job as a defense contractor, got my license. I did it part-time for the first 4 or 5 months until I could see the business was about to take off. And, my focus initially was just on 200, really less than 200 condos in the building I lived in. And I just, hit those people hard. I did events, email, consistently, direct mail consistently. And I ended up getting like 50% of the market share with all the sales that year in that building. And I'd meet people who liked it but wanted the one across the street, right? So I just kind of spread naturally from there. And it doesn't really have to be geographic either, right? Your focus, it can be on a group of people. It can be on a different prospecting technique. Like some people are super good with expires, FISBOs, prospecting. So it doesn't, your market segment does not have to be geographical. Often it is, but it could also be like another closely related group of people or even a marketing technique.
Yeah, that definitely, resonates with me because I kind of use that concept in starting other businesses outside. I use it in my real estate business, but I use it in other businesses outside of real estate. Like I use it for my cafe, and it's really like working wonders. So if you're like a business owner, like please go out, buy the book, tailor it to kind of your niche. And then you were a submarine officer. Can you explain how that affected, you being an entrepreneur? Last episode, I talked about, me being a SWO. It like shaped me for entrepreneurship and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the military and maybe even more so submarines really preps us for being analytical, right? As a surface warfare officer, like, you need to know the boat, the combat systems, the engine room, the contact picture when you're driving, right? And no different on the subs. So sometimes we have a nuclear reactor to worry about, but right. So you have to be very analytical, which I think is important in entrepreneurship and sales. And then I think the second kind of way it preps us is with the discipline side of it, right? A lot of people struggle as agents or entrepreneurs because they don't have a boss telling them what to do, or even if they have a team lead, right? There's a lot more flexibility that the team lead's going to have compared to the traditional, employer-employee relationship. And I think having that background of discipline really helps, because the biggest thing in succeeding, I think, as a real estate agent is being consistent. I think there's just a lot of people that get in the business that don't put enough time on task and aren't consistent. And I think that's
succeeding in anything,
yeah.
Whether it's a real estate agent, developer, business owner. It's just, putting that time in on the task, which is huge.
And I think the military in general does a good job of, making sure people get used to being responsible, being consistent, and that really translates into success in, the businesses that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. So do you have any advice for you? You're a second class midshipman sitting in Bancroft Hall, right? Looking back, what advice would you have for Dan, second class Dan? Just building wealth, business. What advice would you have for that person?
That's an interesting question. So junior in college, right? Who's gonna have at least a 5-year military career.
Yeah.
Ahead. Do they still do the second class loan?
Yeah, they still do the second class loan, and that was gonna lead me to my second question.
Yeah. So what do they give you for that?
So my class, I think it was like 32,000.
Okay, so it's gone up a lot.
Yeah.
Don't go blow that on a car, right? So they're gonna give you this chunk of money at 0% interest or something.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I would invest it in something. I think I probably put mine in mutual funds and stuff. And then I bought my first house when I got stationed in Kings Bay, Georgia. I bought it in Jacksonville, so that was probably a year after I graduated. But I would definitely start to think of, how can I take advantage of the VA loan? How can I take advantage of the free money they give you, basically, right?
Yeah.
The free loan. And I think for a lot of people, real estate during their military career is going to be a decent side hustle to start with. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I tell people all the time, there's no fee associated with learning. So
yeah,
if you're, sitting in Bancroft, you can always learn. Nobody's stopping you from learning about real estate or learning about stock or anything like that. So you always have those opportunities. You're limited, what you can really do, because, you don't have necessarily the capital or the time to go really invest and really start a side hustle. So I always recommend people just, gaining as much knowledge on different subjects. Who knows, you might like real estate, you might like, stocks and stuff like that. So what advice would you give, the person who's on their first or second Devo tour? They're nearing the end of their, service commitment. They're within a few years. What advice would you give to them if they're looking to getting into investing or entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I mean, if they're thinking about getting out and starting off as an entrepreneur and investor, I think, don't wait until you're unemployed to start, right? So start planning now. Listen to podcasts in the areas that you are interested in. Read books, find mentors, and start before you exit. You can get your real estate license while you're still active duty. You can buy homes or buy investment property while you're still active duty. So if it's in those areas that you're interested in, might as well get a head start on it.
Yeah, absolutely. You could pretty much do anything while you're still active duty. You can, I know people who own cafes, who own different type of companies. But like you said, it has to be like very like niche, because you don't have necessarily like the time to do it, and you have to leverage other people if you're not gonna essentially be around. So I think that's super important, just to overall just make connections. That's one thing I regret.
Yeah.
Like I made a lot of connections while I was in the military.
You started when you were active duty, right?
Yeah. I started with the cafe, buying
Mhm.
properties while I was still active duty. And that came from me doing my research and connecting with people. So that's one thing I kind of regret, is just connecting with more people in the military, because you'll be surprised, who's in your city, who's in the military doing, great things. And that's what, we're trying to do, like on this podcast, is shine a light, with people in your area and stuff like that. So I think that's super important. Super important. So Dan, I appreciate you being on the show today. Do you have anything you want to ask me, or Dan is one of those people who has like extremely high dollar per hour. So for him to even, be here talking to us today is definitely has been an honor. Shining light on different topics and stuff like that. So, we appreciate you driving down from DC. Honestly, his dollar per hour has to be over $1,000. I would imagine. So, I just appreciate you being on the show and everything like that.
Oh no, glad to be on here, and to be a part of this community. And if you're listening and want to see more about what we do, you can hop on over to the Hyperfast Agent podcast. It's on iTunes and Spotify and YouTube and all that great stuff, or just follow me on social media as well. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Glad you were on.